My name is Nick from the team at MusiCounts, and we are talking to the 5 nominees for the 2021 MusiCounts Teacher of the Year Award. And today I'm thrilled to be talking to Mary-Piercey Lewis of Iqaluit Nunavut. So thanks for joining me today, Mary, and congratulations again on your nomination for the award. We're so honored to be able to amplify the great work you're doing in this way. So congratulations again. And so I just wanted to start by talking to you a little bit about what it's been like going through this process, being a nominee for the award. I know you've talked to a lot of different radio stations and press outlets. So yeah, what's the process been like?
The process has been fantastic for a number of reasons. Number one, it's nice to get recognized, even though I know as music teachers, that's not the reason we do our job, but sometimes I don't think that everyone realizes how much work goes on behind the scenes. And so the media coverage has kind of just really opened that up. And so receiving the accolades from community members and from students, and then everyone getting excited about the possibility of winning is really wonderful. But for another reason, more importantly for me, I think, is that I live here in Nunavut. It's an extremely rich musical territory, lots of great music happening here, but there's no music programs per se in schools. There's lots of music happening with extracurricular and certainly with people who enjoy music and want to share it. But there's no music curriculum that has been developed by the government of Nunavut, the Department of Education, and there are no hired specialist music teachers. I'm one of the only ones. There might be one more in another part of the territory. And so just being able to speak openly about that while also showing what's going on at the high school here in Iqaluit, because I run a very large music program, which brings in traditional Inuit music as well as guitar, advanced guitar, and then a concert band program. I think it's opened up a lot of discussion, and I'm hoping that in the future there will be a music education curriculum, and I'd love to be able to help develop it, of course, since I've been working on my own for the past 20 years. And that we will also be able to hire permanent full-time music educators in the schools all across the territory, because no one can argue that music education serves many, many wonderful purposes, including, language acquisition for Inuktitut, for example, for here in Nunavut, which is very important, cultural learning, bringing people together, community, working together, even mental health. All of those things. Music education really, really does all of that. And so I'm hoping that the media will help with that.
As you've been talking about with all these different media outlets about the lack of a formalized music curriculum in Nunavut, what's the reception to that been? Are people surprised to hear that music isn't as formalized in the territory as it is in other parts of the country, or?
I think so, yes, but also no, just because this is a territory where Inuktitut and Inuit culture is first and foremost. And so for many, many years, there's always been some, development of new curricula that includes Inuktitut, and it's still ongoing and developing. So the fact that there's not that fully developed yet means that something like music would follow. So I think people aren't really that surprised, even though they know that hopefully that it will come in the future as everything sort of comes together. Yeah.
For sure. Okay. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your own music program at your school. So for those who aren't familiar, can you just break down what happens and your role in bringing all that to life?
Sure. So I teach at Inuktitut High School in Iqaluit, and I am a full-time music teacher. So I'm teaching music all day long, and I run 3 separate programs. The first one being a choral program, so singing, choir, except that it's different from other places because Inuktitut and Inuit culture are first and foremost in there. So over the past 20 years, I've worked with Inuit musicians, Inuit educators as well. There's a lot of collaboration goes on in this part of the program to collect and transcribe and then rearrange for 3 or 4 part choir, and to really promote Inuktitut. So most of the songs that we sing are in Inuktitut. And then I write, piano arrangements and or guitar, flute, clarinet parts for my band people to play along. And a big part of that program is inviting Inuit artists into the classroom. So if we decide that we're going to sing Louis Ariak's beautiful music, then she would come into the class and talk about it. A lot of our students, whether they're Inuit or not, don't have Inuktitut as their first language anymore. So the fact that we have the singer-songwriter in to talk about their poetry, what it means, and how they came up with the song is really important because there's connection between performer and the students. And then we will take, with permission, of course, her song and make it our own. So we would rearrange and create. I've been here for 12 years, so I have alumni coming out of that program now. One is Olivia Chislett. She's an amazing throat singer. Throat singing is a big part of Inuit culture. So twice a week now, she comes into the classroom to teach throat singing to the new kids, the younger ones. And then what's really nice about her work at the school is that she's a young woman. So she teaches traditional throat singing, but then allows the space within the classroom for the kids to be innovative and creative with it. So we often play around with the traditional elements of throat singing and just rework and remake new things, either adding it to other types of music or just coming up with really wonderful new sounds. And that's through Olivia's work. She's a fantastic educator and an alumni of the choir. And then, of course, we also have David Surqua and Matthew Nukinga. These are, and Siobhan Anaxiak Murphy, amazing drum dancers to come in and teach drum dancing techniques. And the same thing, we learn traditional drum dancing, Inuit drum dancing with traditional pisit or ayaya songs. But then again, these educators are wonderful in the sense that they allow the kids to be innovative. So sometimes the young girls and boys will then choreograph their own drum dance songs that may include 3 or 4 or 5 drums as opposed to the traditional just one drum. And we have women and men drum dancing, or boys and girls. So that's one part of the program, and that's the big part, because that's where the Inuit culture is really focused and honored within the curriculum. Mm-hmm. I also teach guitar, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. It's a 3-tiered program. But again, I start with Inuit music. So all of those, the canon of beautiful Inuit artists from Nunavut, because a lot of the music is 3, 4, 5 chords. And so I begin with chords in the beginning, and the kids are listening to their favorite Inuit artists while they learn to play. And that program is watch what I do what I do. I teach tab as well, so that the kids eventually in the second year will be learning solos. And then we do bass guitar. And it's, again, mostly using Inuit music, but sometimes veering off into other styles, blues and whatnot as well. That's really popular. I have lots of kids in those classes. And then the third program is a concert band program, and that starts in grade 10. So the kids, they have no music training up until grade 9 when they come into high school. But in grade 10, they can do concert band. And that's where we do, like a regular Southern style curriculum. So kids are learning flute, clarinet, trumpet, trombone, French horn, percussion, bass, everything. And I use Standard of Excellence textbooks and accent on achievement. And so by the time they get to grade 12, they're quite good. What's really exciting about that is we work with the National Arts Center. So we get small group lessons via Zoom with members of the National Orchestra, which is really exciting. It only happens a couple times a year, but it's really neat for the kids to learn from amazing musicians. And then, of course, I arrange Inuit music so that we can showcase some of the better players, like the flutes, clarinets, and we have strings too. And then they can play on some of the Inuit music that we sing in the choir. And we've made we've just finished our 3rd CD, so you can hear all of it
That's
So I'm kid
incredible.
drawn.
I have so many questions, but first and foremost, it's so cool to hear you talk about how it seems like there's a whole community, both in Iqaluit and beyond, really invested in the success of your music program and bringing in all these different perspectives, which is so incredible. So yeah, that's fantastic. And it's interesting to hear you talk about how when kids come into this music program in high school, they have no musical training prior to that. What's that like? Because I expect most high school educators, kids have been following a music curriculum, throughout elementary and middle school. So what's it like getting these students with no musical training?
Well, a couple of things there. Some of them come from musical families, and those musical families are amazing. So they're coming from a tradition already that is musical. So they're coming with obviously music in their bodies. So that's good. We also have the Iqaluit Music Society here. So there's a fiddle program that goes, it's extracurriculars, fiddle program. There's singing. We do a choral festival that tries to bring in all the schools. So the kids do get some music throughout their younger years. And of course, the ones that are interested are involved in that. So there is some musical training, even though it's not a curriculum at school. But for me, when they do come to the high school, because there is no formalized music education prior to, I get them right at the beginning. And so I can just know where they are. And then, and I'm the one teaching them for 4 years. So I can help them grow. So it makes it good in that sense that everyone is kind of starting out at the beginning. So I don't have multiple levels. I mean, there will be multiple levels as we go on, but at least I'll know the kids and their way of learning and already be tapped into how to help them be better musicians. And you're right, there is a huge community here. And I try to have concerts that involve everyone. Like at Christmas, I invite all of the musicians to come and play with us, and we rehearse together. So young and old are all together. It's really magical, really, whenever everyone collaborates and plays together. Yeah.
Amazing. And do you find that that kids, when they come into your music program, that they're really energized and excited about music class and having the opportunity to participate that in school?
Definitely, because my room is always open. So the door is always open. And of course, with the senior students, I run a junior instructor mentorship program with them. So the room is the students' room, and the older kids are involved and have ownership because they are also passing on. They're teaching. They help out by teaching sections. They help by teaching. I have my advanced clarinet, help the beginner clarinet, same thing within choir. And so they're excited because I think when they come into the room, it's not just teacher, student, it's really a place to come and learn from your peers where people can be comfortable. And that says a lot, especially here, and I'm sure all over Canada and the world, where the students are coming into the classroom with all kinds of issues, some with PTSD, there's all sorts of mental health issues. So having a space to come into where there are students, older students, who may have also experienced some of those things, make that space a very comfortable space, a welcoming and open space, and then allow for the creativity to happen, and also the healing, and certainly the excitement, because people want to do it. And we still strive to be the best musicians that we can, and we still strive for excellence. But the big part of the program is just the solidarity and just working together and making sure that we're there for each other. And sometimes that's what makes the beautiful music.
Of course, yeah. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about just your experience kind of witnessing the relationship between music education and mental wellness for your students. We all kind of know that that's a thing, that music helps us, cope with stress and anxiety and stuff like that. But in your experience, what has that been like working with your students?
There's so many examples. And some of the alumni that have left will, even in future years say how the music program had saved them at a time whenever they were low. It was where they came. That's the reason they came to school, was to be in the music room making music, and that it's what helped them. And I think a lot of that is also because we're doing Inuit music, we're doing Inuktitut, we're promoting Inuit identity, we're honoring it in the program, and then also to have the young people to be leaders. But I'll give you one specific example. A few years ago, we participated in another collaboration, and it was with the National Arts Center. Now, we write our own music, like I do songwriting with the kids. Obviously, they can do whatever they like, but this particular project, songwriting project, was with the National Arts Center, and we were asked to reflect on Rita Joe's poem, I Lost My Talk. So she's a Mi'kmaq scholar. And her poem talks about, losing her culture, losing her language, and the fact that she's angry about that because she attended residential schools growing up. She feels like she had lost her culture. And then at the end of her poem, she reaches out with her hand and says, but, if you take my hand, I can show you another way. And I think, throughout her life, she has reclaimed her language and, of course, is and her culture too. So my students were asked to reflect on that musically, to create something musically with that poem as the foundation. And so luckily we were also able to work with members of the Jerry Cans. I don't know if the Jerry Cans were at the JUNOs a couple of years ago. They are a famous group here in Nunavut. So they were invited to come and work with us. So we had Nancy Mike, who's an amazing throat singer, toot singer, and Andrew Morrison. So they were all part of this collaboration. And the kids interviewed their elders, elders that had also participated in residential schools. They connected with them, went through some of the, the pain and suffering, but then also some of the healing as they reconnected with stories of their elders about their experiences, things that they probably didn't even know about. And then we wrote a song based on all of this when it all came together. And it's called Uqaqsira, which means I lost my talk. Uqaqsira asiuyi yara. And the kids added, I had my guitar players. It was all student performers. We had guitar, bass, and then we had vocal and the poem, and throat singing and drum dancing. And then it was professionally recorded. And now you can see it at the National Arts Center. But in reflection, when we come back to the reflection of the students that were involved in the project, and of course we use it in future years now, in discussions in our class, you can see that there's been healing because they were creative. They've identified some of the things with their elders. There was connection there. And for that reason, they carry that now into their future with a certain sense of hope, certain sense that, things hopefully will be better. And that within education, it's my great hope that some of the people that have come through the program will become educators themselves and break the cycle and help the healing for future generations. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that answers the question.
No, it definitely does.
There's lots of others, just the kids being there for each other it's great.
It's amazing. That's beautiful. And it's really incredible to see, just like hearing you talk, it's just everything that you're saying just kind of exudes this like really energized community through music, particularly around celebrating and preserving culture. And it's really amazing that these teens, these young people seem very invested in that as well. It seems like they're all kind of taking this on and making this happen together, which is really special. I wanted to talk.
It's important to offer them.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying also to offer them the space to be able to do it, because young people are so filled with thoughts and ideas, but then there's nowhere for them to express them. And music is a wonderful avenue to be able to do that, and then to also create that open and safe space. And then they want more and more and more. Anyways, go ahead.
That's great. I just wanted to talk about, because you kind of come at music education from an interesting background, because you're also a scholar. You hold a doctorate from Memorial University, and you've published these collections of transcribed work that you were talking about. So how does, I guess you already touched on this a little bit, but maybe you can talk a little bit more about how your background as a scholar informs how you approach music education at your school in Iqaluit.
Yes. Well, I can start with, when I did my master's at U of T, I studied with a man, Dr. David Elliott, who has a philosophy of music education called Music Matters. It's a textbook that he uses, but his philosophy then, and that was years ago when I studied with him, was that you can't separate music and culture, that they coexist. And he was adamant that whenever you're a music educator, that yes, you should be doing in your classroom, especially because we all live in multicultural centers, that we should be doing music from many cultures, but not just to dibble and dab at it and say, okay, well, today we're going to do an African song and tomorrow we're going to do, a song from Israel, but to really open up the space to make sure that you had tradition bearers to come in, and it's more easy to do now with Zoom, to come in and express what the meaning of those songs is, and maybe even to teach them, and so that the learning is much more rich. So I think that the interest in my background started with him, with Dr. Elliott, and so I think I'd like to tell him one of these days what an influence he's been on me, but that was the start. And so I presented a bunch of papers on how we need to revamp music education in our schools way back then, to make it a little bit more accessible, to making sure that music and culture it coexisted. And then I went to Akviet to teach music, and that's when I found that there was no music curriculum, and there was nothing Inuit based for us to do in the school now. And so I promptly then invited elders and musicians to come in, and we had a mentorship program for myself too, and realized that, especially for Nunavut, that something needed to change, that there needed to be more collaboration between teachers, more Inuit teachers, more Inuit music educators, and there needed to be more curricula developed, but also that there needs to be more teaching with, education teaching, like Inuit learning how to become music educators, so that they're the ones teaching in the classroom. But then I went off to do an ethnomusicology PhD with Dr. Beverly Diamond. Now, she studied Inuit music in the 70s, not in Iqaluit or Akviet, but further north. And again, that degree was all about music and culture. And because I was interested in Inuit music, it was all about Inuit music. And then that's where I learned all kinds of other things about, cross-cultural learning, do's and don'ts, because sometimes you come at different, when you're learning about other cultures, you have to be careful about things, representation, pedagogy, working within other cultures, or other people working within our cultures. We have to make sure that we're being fair, that there's collaboration happening, and that, in my early days, in my early days, I did things that I shouldn't have done because I was unaware. There were language barriers, but luckily through relationship building and making new friends, especially in Akviet, And so it was through ethnomusicology that learning how to teach within another culture came through. I don't know.
No, yeah. And it's interesting to hear you talk about, Dr. Elliott's philosophy of the connectedness between music and culture, and how different cultures really need to be, seriously engaged with in music class. But that still seems, that was a while ago, but that's still such a barrier for music education across the country, even now. So when we're looking at, some of the broad challenges that are faced by music education in this country at this moment, and obviously there are several, what to you is the biggest challenge that music education needs to surmount at this moment?
I think that is the biggest challenge. For me, living in an Inuit culture, it is a bit easier if because I'm surrounded by Inuit musicians and surrounded by Inuit tradition bearers, people who love to come into the classroom to share their knowledge with the students. So, and because I'm a part of the community and have been here for 12 years here in Iqaluit, making that happen is not difficult. However, our school is in the capital, and we have an array of cultures at the school. It's very diverse, and it has been getting more and more and more diverse over the years. So that means that I have become very hyper aware also that yes, we're honoring Inuit culture within the curriculum, but we also need to honor the culture of all of our students at some, I mean, and so that has been a challenge for me because there's little pockets of people, and not all of them are musicians, of course, but that doesn't matter. Even for Black History Month last month, I had Cabello come, well, we actually did a Zoom meeting, and he taught us Nkosi Sikelele Africa, which is the national anthem of South Africa, and he taught us Tumamina, and we sang those as part of our, well, we did a video instead of an assembly. And then he spoke to the kids about growing up in South Africa and what these songs meant for him and how powerful they were about making sure that young people, doesn't matter what culture you're from, but that young people step out into the world representing who they are. So representing themselves, representing their parents, representing their own culture, and always do that with pride. And to be, just to be trailblazers out into the world. And one of the songs that we did, Tumamina, for him, that's what it means. When you sing it, it says, here I am, send me as to be a leader, to be an ambassador for my people or for who I am, and that's cross-cultural. And it was great. It was great for everyone to experience and participate in another culture. And then for Cabello to be the one to share it with us. And so I try to make that happen as best as I can. And I'm sure that in especially Toronto and all those other centers, music educators can find, but it is a challenge. It's hard because sometimes there's not curricula, there's no resources, and you have to go search them out. And then we're busy people, we're teaching all day long. So then you have to find time to have these meetings and then to collaborate and, to kind of make sure that it all happens in a good way. But that is a huge challenge because it's a big endeavor and it requires a lot of thought and work. And then, yeah.
What would and I know, I mean, it seems like this is almost underway in a sense, but your vision for music education in the territory of Nunavut, it sounds like you're doing so much work to inspire young people to kind of be music education leaders throughout the territory, but where would you like to see things?
Well, part of I'm on the Music Society. I'm the vice president of the Music Society, but the president, Darlene McKinga, she's the one who runs the fiddle program, and she's a retired music educator herself. She applied for the Arctic Inspiration Prize and won it this year. It's $1 million.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah.
And so, yes. And so we're started there because that's something that I can help with and that we can do together. And that would be to start developing the curriculum for the junior instructors. So but it would be for teaching little kids. So grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, starting small, and to develop that curriculum, teach the young people how to teach it. Of course, they're going to bring their own thing to it too, because that's what music education is. It's all about being an individual and a person. But that is now going to start under the direction of Darlene, and I will help. So that's there, and that will hopefully continue on. What I would like to see is then for the Department of Education to really see all of the wonderful work that has happened by many different people here in Iqaluit, and to hire someone to develop the music, hire people really, because it has to be a collaborative effort, to develop the music education curriculum, maybe start there. And then, I mean, we have an Arctic College here that you can get a Bachelor of Education, but music education, you can start small, can then be taught in how to train young people to be music educators using the new curriculum. I mean, I would love to see that happen. I would love to be a part of it. And we're getting started now with the Arctic Inspiration Prize. And then maybe one of these years get down to the Department of Education. And then, I don't know, just that's where all the media from this MusiCounts is important, because hopefully it'll just put some little bells off in people's heads who actually make these decisions to say, hey, this is great, and we have the resources to make it happen. So let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, I think this conversation should be evidence enough that that music education in Nunavut is just, it makes such a difference, and it should definitely be a priority for stakeholders. And I hope that your nomination for this award will, move the needle just a little bit, because it's such a valuable effort that you and your community are working on. So thank you for myself and everyone at MusiCounts for all the work that you're doing. It's, like I said, it's our honor to be able to support it in a small way like this. And yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today, Mary. It was terrific. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. My pleasure.